All right. We should be live. I'll give everybody a moment to jump in here. My last couple live streams that I've done really well on my channel. Each of them have like 15,000 views. So I thought, why not jump into another one today? Channel's been growing like crazy. I'm extremely blessed by that, and you guys that continue to subscribe. So if by chance you come across this live stream replay or something, and you're new here, be sure you subscribe. Amazing community. I'm incredibly blessed. But I thought, today we'll continue to talk about this Bitcoin mining stock underperformance and also talk about MicroStrategy and why I personally think they've been outperforming, especially recently, and also get into my thoughts on whether or not I think that'll continue. If you are watching, make sure you pop your head into the chat. I like to see everybody's faces, and I like to hear all you guys' thoughts as well. So, I can't wait to get into this. Let me get situated here really quickly. Also hit that like button for me. I greatly appreciate it. Okay, let me switch to my browser here, and let's talk about this. I posted this tweet just a couple days ago. I think it was actually just yesterday. I said, MicroStrategy just overtook CleanSpark as the best performing Bitcoin-related investment over the past year. MicroStrategy overtook them, was up 685%. CleanSpark was at 656%. I mean, if you invest in either of those companies, it's a really good return. But, the fact that MicroStrategy, of all companies, has just, in the blink of an eye, the snap of a fingers, has all of a sudden become the best performing Bitcoin-related investment is kind of crazy, and there has to be a reason for it. So in today's live stream and video, that's exactly what I'm going to be diving into. And I asked, how much longer will this outperformance continue? I posted that as part of the tweet. Do we still call them tweets? I know it's X. It's not Twitter. I think you still call them tweets. Maybe I should just call it a post. I don't know. But even today, MicroStrategy was down 5%, which you might think, oh, that's a really bad day. But then you look at the second best performing Bitcoin related investment, it was down 7.4%, CleanSpark. I own a lot of CleanSpark, and today I actually bought some call options. It's the first move I made in a long time related to Bitcoin mining stocks. Give a quick shout out to my membership if you want to join it. If you're a CleanSpark investor, you just have to join it. If you're a believer in Bitcoin, you have to join it. I 100% refund if you don't find value. So it's a zero risk investment. Mine's probably the cheapest one on YouTube, and I know you're going to enjoy it. But let's talk about this. So why is MicroStrategy all of a sudden outperforming? I thought about this all day long today, and I don't know if I have a great answer. I'll kind of share with you my thoughts that I've compiled together, and maybe together we can find a better answer. So when I think about this, and when I think of this, especially Bitcoin stocks underperforming, usually it means some sort of new fear, uncertainty, or doubt has been put into that stock or that investment. And I think that's the case here. When you think about MicroStrategy compared to the Bitcoin mining stocks like CleanSpark, Marathon, Bitfarms, Iris Energy, Cypher Mining, I think there's like 20 public Bitcoin mining companies out there. The one piece of fear, uncertainty, and doubt that MicroStrategy does not have that these miners do have, and it's a short-term catalyst, is the upcoming halving event. Regardless, for richer or for poorer, MicroStrategy is going to have their Bitcoin, no matter what. Regardless of what the halving event does to the price of Bitcoin, if the price of Bitcoin goes down, MicroStrategy is going to still have their Bitcoin. But with the Bitcoin mining stocks, this is their business. And as the halving event takes place, and let's say Bitcoin does come down in price, well, all of a sudden you're mining half the Bitcoin theoretically at an even cheaper price than you were before the halving event. And all of a sudden you risk these Bitcoin mining stocks having increased capital spend to stay afloat. Where the risk when you invest in Bitcoin mining stocks is they might have to sell their Bitcoin. MicroStrategy, for richer or poorer, is not going to have to sell their Bitcoin. And when you invest in a Bitcoin-related asset, obviously you want that asset or that investment to have Bitcoin. So that's a huge risk right now And you know, by investing in MicroStrategy, investors are mitigating those risks of owning a Bitcoin mining stock. So I'll lay out some of the risks of Bitcoin miners. You have power price fluctuations and availability. You know, sometimes power's not always available, and especially new power, new infrastructure. That's a risk you don't have to worry about if you buy MicroStrategy. You have political tampering with Bitcoin mining stocks. You have a regulatory framework that's nebulous. You know, the President Biden just announced a tax code that might tax the energy used by Bitcoin miners by 30%. MicroStrategy doesn't have to worry about that. You also have miner supply, mining rig supply. Who knows what's going to happen with that? Is there going to remain an abundance of Bitcoin miners, that mining rigs that these companies can purchase to keep mining Bitcoin and add Bitcoin to their balance sheet? Again, that's something MicroStrategy doesn't have to worry about. So there's, especially short term, as we approach this halving event in late April, these Bitcoin mining stocks have a risk that MicroStrategy, for the most part, doesn't have. So I think that's part A of why, especially recently, we've started to see MicroStrategy outperform. Part B of this is actually, it might be counterintuitive to some people, but when we think about the Bitcoin ETFs and the fact that, you know, when the news was starting to spread that the Bitcoin ETFs were going to be approved, what was the news that we kept reading? What was it that people kept talking about? It was that people thought MicroStrategy would lose some of its premium because of these Bitcoin ETFs being approved and starting to be offered as an investment. And it makes sense. My sweatshirt string went wild. It makes sense theoretically. It makes sense because before the Bitcoin ETFs, MicroStrategy was the Bitcoin ETF. This was the company that was acquiring, I think they have like 205,000 Bitcoin today on their balance sheet. That's direct exposure to Bitcoin without having to be involved with the Bitcoin mining business. So it makes sense people thought that MicroStrategy might lose some of its premium as, you know, capital rotated out of MicroStrategy to the legitimate Bitcoin ETFs. Because ETFs are a real institutional investment asset class that has been validated. It's been validated for years. It offers direct exposure to Bitcoin, which MicroStrategy did. And it also entices investors because of the Bitcoin exclusivity. You know, with Bitcoin ETFs, MicroStrategy has a separate business, right? But these Bitcoin ETFs, they don't have an underlying business. It's a Bitcoin exposure exclusive investment, if that makes sense. It's a tongue twister when I try and talk about this, so I apologize. But yeah, that didn't happen. And obviously MicroStrategy has outperformed all these other Bitcoin assets, even the Bitcoin ETFs themselves. And if anything, their beta to Bitcoin has actually increased after the Bitcoin ETF approval, which is crazy to think about. Now, why might that be? Well, let's look at this article. Short sellers have lost $3.3 billion betting against MicroStrategy this year as Bitcoin's record streak has sent shares spiking 180%. The fact of the matter is, because people believed MicroStrategy would shave off some of its beta to Bitcoin as a result of a new asset class presenting itself in the Bitcoin ETFs, people were more enticed to short sell MicroStrategy than they were the Bitcoin mining stocks. Because Bitcoin mining stocks and Bitcoin mining investments will always be risky and will always have high beta to Bitcoin. And if Bitcoin does well, Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do well. And if Bitcoin does poorly, Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do poorly. It's the fact of the matter. The riskier the investment, generally, the better it actually performs in bull markets and the worse it performs in bear markets. So MicroStrategy is kind of in between that. And as a result of that, and as a result of people thinking that their beta might be shaved slightly as a result of the Bitcoin ETFs, I think short sellers more heavily shorted MicroStrategy than they did the Bitcoin mining stocks. So you're seeing a short squeeze with MicroStrategy that, yeah, you're seeing with Bitcoin mining stocks too, but because there's more short interest with MicroStrategy, it leads to an even bigger short squeeze. And let me tell you, the risk with MicroStrategy, it will present itself someday. I promise you. When they're borrowing money and doing all these convertible note deals to buy Bitcoin, there will come a doomsday where they may be forced to sell their Bitcoin because they get called on their debt. That is a risk. And right now everybody's talking about the benefits of the Bitcoin ETFs, how great they are, how much demand it's going to add to Bitcoin. I agree with all of that. But the day will come, and I promise you this, the day will come. Nobody wants to talk about it right now, but the day will come where the Bitcoin ETFs also have the opposite effect on the price of Bitcoin. We're going to have some sort of event take place where all of this institutional capital that's gone to the Bitcoin ETFs, I think it was $2.2 billion last week alone, there will be an event someday that forces institutional money out of the Bitcoin ETFs. And these Bitcoin ETFs will have outflows. That is going to add tremendous volatility to the price of Bitcoin. Just as we're seeing it benefit the price of Bitcoin right now, someday it will hurt the price of Bitcoin. I promise you that. Now, over the short term, I 100% agree. We are very early cycle when it comes to institutional adoption of Bitcoin. There's three BlackRock funds right now that have access to Bitcoin ETFs. And I think those funds have around $55 billion of assets under management. BlackRock has come out and said they plan to invest capital into their own Bitcoin ETF, as well as the other ETFs from the other issuers, because all these Bitcoin ETFs are different. There's a lot of institutional capital that is still not yet in Bitcoin. And I think over the next 6, 12, 18 months, maybe, Bitcoin is going to perform tremendously well. But again, don't forget, when we get to that moment of euphoria, I'm not scared to talk about this stuff. When we get to the moment of euphoria, think back to now. There will come a day of reckoning where all of this positive price pressure will turn into negative price pressure, and that is unexplored territory. We don't know what that's going to look like, and it could be scary. With MicroStrategy, back to this topic, this is the first time we've gone through a Bitcoin halving event with MicroStrategy holding Bitcoin. They made their first Bitcoin purchase in August of 2020, I think. So in the previous Bitcoin halving event, we didn't have MicroStrategy. So we're already in new territory. That's why it's so tough to figure out why MicroStrategy is outperforming while these Bitcoin mining stocks are underperforming. Now, long term, I mentioned this already. I do believe Bitcoin mining stocks are going to find their groove again. I think it might take, $80,000 per Bitcoin, but they will find their groove again because Bitcoin mining stocks will remain the most risky investment when it comes to Bitcoin. They're going to remain the highest leveraged play to Bitcoin, and they're going to have their day in the sun again. There's three reasons I see Bitcoin mining stocks having issues right now and why they're underperforming. We've already talked about the halving event and the risk that miner revenues will decrease after that halving event. That's a realistic possibility, and that's a risk to investing in Bitcoin mining stocks right now. You also have capital reallocating from miners to the spot Bitcoin ETFs. $2 billion I mentioned last week alone went to the Bitcoin ETFs. Do you think this was $2 billion that was just sitting on the sidelines waiting to be invested? Probably not. It came from somewhere. And more than likely, it came from Bitcoin mining stocks. So eventually that's going to dry up too. The people that want to get out of the Bitcoin mining stocks to get into the Bitcoin exclusive investment in Bitcoin ETFs, the spot Bitcoin ETFs, those people will have sold out. And you'll find the rebalancing of the buying and selling pressure in the Bitcoin mining stocks. And at that point, when Bitcoin starts to go up, the Bitcoin mining stocks are going to refine their beta to Bitcoin, as I like to call it. And then the third thing, I think I mentioned three things. The third thing that we have is the miners front ran this recent Bitcoin rally. The largest miners out there saw their stock prices more than double in Q4 of last year, while the price of Bitcoin increased 60%. That's quite a, I don't know if dichotomy is the word. It's quite a difference though. Bitcoin front ran this rally. They outperformed this rally. It's natural in that scenario where you would give some gains back. So there's also that. You also have to remember last year in 2023, the miners outperformed Bitcoin by basically 2.5x. 2.5x the price of Bitcoin return. The miners were up 400% on the year versus Bitcoin being up 156%. So the Bitcoin mining stocks, to at least some degree, I'm not saying completely, but to at least some degree, have front ran this Bitcoin move. And it's natural. People are going to take their profits. You have people that have been holding these stocks for years now. Since 2021, when they topped. There's people that have been holding for that long that are now in the green or have at least recovered their losses. And it's natural. I mean, right or wrong, I disagree with it, but people are going to choose to sell their stock if they've been holding it for a long time with zero gain, or at one point when they were down 90+% on that investment and now they're back to break even. They might want to take some of their risk off the table. I talked about that in a Twitter space today. Risk tolerance is always changing. And if you can't stomach one of your stocks going down 5 to 10%, 20%, 30% after you buy it, you probably have too much capital invested into those stocks. So just because it looks bright and the future looks bright, don't full portfolio into these Bitcoin mining stocks. Don't full portfolio into Nvidia and MicroStrategy. I promise you, you're going to regret it, because when your emotions enter the investing discussion, you start to make big mistakes. You don't want to invest with your emotions. You want to remove your emotions as much as possible. I know that's a whole other conversation. By the way, make sure you ask any questions in the chat. I might have some time here at the end of the stream to actually get to the chat. Again, if you're new here, returning, not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. We just hit 30,000 2 days ago, and we're already at basically 30,500. Absolutely remarkable. I'm incredibly blessed by you guys. It's just amazing, an amazing community. But before I get to the chat, this might be the most profound thing I wanted to talk about in today's video. And it's a chart that shows the mining stocks decoupling from Bitcoin's price movement. You'll see this green line right here. This is the date that spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved. I think it's January 10th, if I remember correctly. And then you'll see just recently, we'll just say March 3rd, beginning of March, we've seen this inflection point where the orange line is the price of Bitcoin, and the blue line is the cumulative market cap for the largest miners. You'll see the price of Bitcoin has gone up from mid-$60,000s to over $70,000 right now, but the cumulative market cap of the Bitcoin miners has actually fallen. It's fallen tremendously. Let me go back. We were at $21 billion of cumulative market cap, and we're down to 19, 18, somewhere in there, probably 18 after today. So we've seen this weird inflection point. What was the inflection? What was the inflection point? What might have caused it? Well, let's look at this. ETF volumes. ETF volumes have picked. Sure, the big spot Bitcoin ETFs were approved at the beginning of January 10th, I think it was, as I mentioned. It looks like I got to zoom out a little bit more so you guys can see this a little better. But look at how the Bitcoin ETF inflows have increased dramatically since the end of February and the beginning of March. So you have this weird inflection point around the same time that Bitcoin ETF inflows increased. And this just goes back to my argument that, yeah, over the short term, these spot Bitcoin ETFs are likely to steal some of the trading volume. It's natural. Some of the trading volume from the Bitcoin space. There are numerous assets in the crypto economy that you can go out and buy. You can do that. And this is just another one that's recently been added, and it just so happens it's a big alternative to Bitcoin mining stocks. And so, yeah, sure, over the short term, you're going to see some capital outflow from Bitcoin mining stocks into these exclusive spot Bitcoin ETF plays. It makes sense. And I think these two charts really tell the story here. Now, eventually, this inflow is going to slow down. I already mentioned I think Bitcoin is going to perform tremendously well over the next 6, 12, maybe 18 months, depending on how long this bull market lasts. But eventually this will normalize. Eventually the inflows will stop going up and they'll flatline. And again, at that point, when you find that balance between buyers and sellers, that's when you're really ready to make your next move. So this was probably the most profound thing I wanted to share in this live stream. To me, it's evident. As ETF inflows pick up, the mining stocks have started to inflect away from Bitcoin's price movement. I think this is entirely a short-term catalyst. I think this is entirely short-term. And today, again, I bought call options on Bitcoin mining stocks. And you can get my buy and sell alerts if you join my membership. Again, hit the join button down below. I would say it's a requirement, but I can't say it's a requirement. But I do appreciate everybody supporting me via the membership. It helps me avoid all the crappy sponsorships other YouTubers take. And you can get some pretty sick perks by joining the membership. So I just encourage you to look through the perks, and if they interest you, try out the first month. And if you don't find value, I'll 100% refund you. So zero risk investment there for you. And I can't remember what I had here. Oh yeah, I think it was just this morning, Microstrategy announced they were raising even more money to buy more Bitcoin. So, obviously Microstrategy has been the most aggressive accumulator of Bitcoin recently. They have outpaced, I think they've even outpaced all of the Bitcoin mining stocks combined for quite some time now. And also, they're not too far off of the Bitcoin ETFs either. So again, usually the most aggressive accumulator of an asset that's appreciating in price is going to command some sort of premium to that underlying asset, right? So it's just another thing that could be adding to the premium and increased beta with MicroStrategy stock. Again, they mentioned using debt to acquire Bitcoin has worked wonders for the company over the past year, but the question is whether this can continue. I mentioned this earlier in the stream. The day of reckoning will come where MicroStrategy's financials come into question. If Bitcoin goes down, which it'll go down again, don't get lost in the euphoria. Bitcoin will have a bear market again. When that happens, does MicroStrategy get called on some of their debts? And if they do, they're probably gonna have to liquidate some of that Bitcoin. And you also, again, you have these Bitcoin ETFs. Everybody likes to talk about how great they are for demand and the price of Bitcoin over the short term, and I agree. But the day will come. These institutional assets that have come into the Bitcoin ETFs, they will also have a day where they want to take their money out of the Bitcoin ETFs, which is going to lead to negative price action for the price of Bitcoin. So don't get lost in this luster. Stay even keeled. It has to, I've talked about managing your emotions with investing. It's the same point I'm making now. Anyways, I think we've got caught up here on everything I wanted to talk about. I have some time here for the chat. Just a couple questions here I saw people asking. Okay, yeah, JR says, nice topic. Please continue doing more streams. Yeah, I mean, if you guys keep showing up for these streams, I mentioned my last two streams have like 15,000 views apiece. If that continues, I have no choice but to continue to stream. So I appreciate you guys a bunch for that. And he says, how high can MicroStrategy go this year realistically? Too late to buy more? No. I've mentioned with the Bitcoin mining stocks, if Bitcoin does well, all of the Bitcoin mining stocks are going to do well. It's the way it is. That's why I don't view it as diversification if you own more than one Bitcoin mining stock, because a rising tide lifts all boats. I would rather focus my attention on what I view to be the best in breed, but that's another discussion and a conversation. With MicroStrategy, I personally think MicroStrategy could hit 4,500 to 5,000 sometime in 2025, depending on what the price of Bitcoin does. Me saying that I think MicroStrategy's outperformance is going to end at some point is not me saying I think it's going to perform poorly. There's a big difference here. I think MicroStrategy could perform greatly compared to the rest of the markets, but I think the increased return and increased beta for Bitcoin mining stocks is going to take back over sometime soon. I'm not sure when. For this year in 2024, that's a difficult question. It obviously depends what the price of Bitcoin does. I wouldn't be surprised if MicroStrategy achieves $3,000 a share this year in 2024, which would be a double up from current prices. Actually, slightly less than a double up. So I think it can still return great for investors. Good question there. Okay. Let's see. Other questions here really quick. Miners are the only ones producing new supply of Bitcoin, which currently stands at 900, post-halving 450. Without the miners, ETFs and MicroStrategy won't have any new supply of Bitcoin. No logic for good miners to fail. Yeah, and that's actually something I could discuss here quickly too. Is there's a misconception out there that the halving event is going to bankrupt all these Bitcoin mining stocks. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen, and this is why. The Bitcoin ecosystem is designed in a way to make it profitable, always be profitable, for enough Bitcoin miners to mine Bitcoin so that the blockchain remains secure. And if it's not profitable to mine Bitcoin for enough companies and enough mining rigs, the network becomes unsecure, and Bitcoin fails, and MicroStrategy fails, and the Bitcoin ETFs fail. Everything with Bitcoin is built on the profitability of mining Bitcoin and securing the blockchain. Without it, everything fails. So either the price of Bitcoin has to go up to make it profitable enough for enough miners to secure the blockchain, or if the price of Bitcoin doesn't go up, you'll see Bitcoin difficulty drop. And when Bitcoin difficulty drops, it means you can mine blocks easier. And if you can mine more blocks in the same amount of time, you'll still be mining more Bitcoin. If you're one of the Bitcoin mining operators that remains operational, you can command more of the network hash rate. So people think that all of these Bitcoin mining stocks and companies are going to be squashed out, and I know some of them will be, but the best in breed, this is entirely an industry of scale. It's like farming. I'm a fourth generation farmer. Unfortunately, the big get bigger and the small get squashed. It's just the way it is. So, people have a very common misconception about it. Mining Bitcoin has to be profitable for enough mining rigs. Otherwise, the Bitcoin network becomes unsecure. That's why you have difficulty adjustments. If the price of Bitcoin doesn't go up, the difficulty will adjust downwards. And sure, the block reward, so the total Bitcoin reward per block that is mined, will be cut in half. But these mining companies can also potentially mine more blocks in the same amount of time if they command more of the network hash rate. So very in-depth conversation we could have about that. Hopefully that clears that up a little bit for some of you watching this, though. Gorilla says, MicroStrategy could dilute shares to pay debt and keep the Bitcoin? Potentially, but you have to remember, if the price of Bitcoin does go down, and it'll have another bear market, if it goes low enough, because Bitcoin is making up such a large percentage of their total assets as a company, naturally their stock price is going to fall as their market cap falls. And at some point, your stock price falls so much that you have to dilute so much in order to raise enough capital to pay your debt. That's why you have two sides to the capital equation. You have equity and you have debt. Sometimes equity is more attractive, sometimes debt is more attractive. And if you can't pay your bills with the cash flows of the company, you have to pull one of those two levers. And it could be different at any given point in time. Which one is the better option? Obviously, right now for MicroStrategy, debt's the better option. But there will come a day, maybe in the future, where their debt gets called because the price of Bitcoin's gone down. And if the price of Bitcoin's gone down, there's a chance their stock price also is tanked, which is going to hurt shareholders tremendously if they dilute at low prices. Okay. Bitcoin to 100,000, 100% chance this year, says Love My Poker. I agree with that. I made my Bitcoin price prediction early last year, and at the time, people thought I was crazy. I got to go back and find the video, but you should see the comments that I got. When I said I thought Bitcoin would hit $100,000 in 2024, people hated that prediction. And now all of a sudden, it looks like that prediction is going to be low. So it's kind of crazy how sentiment can change so quickly. Personally, I'm not going to raise my Bitcoin price target or projection for the year. I'm not one that does that. I'm going to leave my price prediction the same. I think next year, 2025, I'll have to look at my spreadsheet again, which all my spreadsheets are made available to my members as well. You can hit the join button or watch the replay. I'll have a link to my Patreon. I think my spreadsheet has Bitcoin hitting 250,000 next year, I think. So that still is tremendous upside in this bull market, if the bull market continues. Peter World asks my thought, or what my logic is with having CleanSpark being $40 when Bitcoin hits $100,000. So I would encourage you to go back and watch one of my CleanSpark videos. I explain that in detail, how I come up with those numbers. Anyways, let's see how the after hours action is looking here before I sign off. MicroStrategy's up 1.5%. I'm guessing CleanSpark is still lagging. Yeah, down 38 basis points. Somebody mentioned Bitfarms. I'll pull that up really quickly. Again, if you guys are new here, returning and not yet subscribed, please subscribe down below. Wow, Bitfarms is up 5.5% after hours. I wonder why that is. Did I miss some news? I'll have to look into that later. I'll leave this stream up for replay. Be sure you come back and watch this if you're just tuning in. We went through a lot of really valuable information here. I'll try and timestamp it this time as well. My last 2 live streams have like 15,000 views. I don't know. That's a high bar to live up to, you guys, but I appreciate all the likes and the new subscribers. I'm extremely blessed. Yeah. Anyways, I've talked about everything I wanted to talk about here today, so I'm going to sign off. I'll leave the replay up so you can rewatch the stream. But yeah, with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day. And as I always say, stay blessed and keep 10 toes to the ground and your chin up. Peace out.